Hello everyone, this is Kosuke. Welcome to my channel. Today we are going to do master film study. Basically, it's a challenge to recreate the scene from a movie by using 3D and 2D software and then learn the cinematography and what makes the image look pretty cinematic. I chose this scene from Minari, directed by Lee Isaac Chung. It's based on his childhood story. It's a gorgeous movie. I highly recommend if you haven't watched it. It really questions what's important to your life. It's pretty meaningful movie. This is the first time to recreate the film scene for me, and I think this one's pretty good to start. So I hope you enjoy. Alright, first of all, I use F-Spy to analyze the scene. What's the camera, what's the focal length, and also the perspective. This is absolutely fundamental, I guess, to start recreating some scene like this, especially scene like interior or architectural, whatever there is an architecture. And here I started placing some blockings to figure out basically if this is gonna work as a scene. Just placing some cubes and main object and super rough lighting. I'm using Blender kit to import some of the furnitures or like whatever the useful tools online on the fly. And here I got a chair, a couch, singular couch, and roughly shaded and distorted to align the scene. I set the background image on the camera so that you can always see what's behind. Now I started modeling the character. I'm using not MetaHuman. I wish I can use MetaHuman. This is called Make Human. It's a free software to create super basic human model. It won't be anywhere photoreal at all, but as a lighting reference, I think that this is gonna be enough. And later on, I'm gonna paint on top of this one. So I created this super unlike Steven Yeun model and changed the texture, and I painted pocket and buttons. That looks absolutely stupid just there, and position him in the scene, and also added a little bit of subdivision on the couch to deform to make the cushion look like sinking. And position him as he is in the picture. Starting add more details on the furnitures. Here I'm modeling super roughly the radio. Looks like inside the kitchen table. That looks pretty cool. Kitchen counter. It's actually cool to have that one. I don't think we have them anymore because this is supposed to be a little bit of old scene, so those props are supposed to be a little bit nostalgic. Here I'm making some wrinkle with cross brush with Blender, and inside of Blender it looks absolutely terrible. And also adding more materials from Megascan library. If you have plugin installed, you can just click it and then automatically import into Blender. I think this is pretty cool. Adding more furnitures from Blender kit. Right, disclaimer, this is not a tutorial, it's a time-lapse video, and I'm just talking and voice over it. And I'm not really good at talking. This is my first time doing this, so please bear with me. Hopefully in the future I'm gonna be better at talking. Hopefully. As modeling the furnitures, adding a little bit light to the point where I can see in the picture. So right now I have basically 3 lights going on. So here, this Chinese ornament, I'm not sure if it's like they're supposed to be Korean, so I think it's supposed to be Korean ornament, but I couldn't find it, so it's actually Chinese. Basically, it's just a photo, extruded the faces, added a calendar, added subdivision, and then bent it a little bit. Surprisingly, it was pretty hard to find a desired looking wooden texture for the wall. Tweak the lighting from the light stand. You can change the IOR setting to IOR or subsurface setting of the material to make it light more diffused. So here I'm starting texturing and shading the models. For the plants I used Megascan models. Later on I'm gonna add more light on that plant, as I think the plant is important for this character as he's a farmer, and this is a scene where he started growing his business and his farm. So I think these plants are kind of representing his growth. Here I'm adding his limbs because I realized if I cut his shirt to the short sleeves, I realized there is no arms basically. So adding some shelves. These are actually one texture, one polygon, slap on top of just a cube. Adding more detail on the ceiling. Made a lamp on the ceiling, and also there is I don't know how to call it. It's like a steel pipe on top of the shelf. And also there's a little cabinet right in front of the camera to create a little bit of depth, I guess. This is my first try making a film study in Blender, and I chose these scenes because it's well lit, and also it's inside of a very common environment that we see every day. I think it's a very good starting point to create something like this very realistic, like practical example. If I start from like medieval scene or like something that I'm not used to see, probably I won't be able to tell that if that's like realistic or not, but we are so used to seeing these kind of things. So I think it's a good starting point to create something that you already know, or at least you're familiar with. So now I'm here. Here's me. I'm trying to make him look like Steven. And literally, this is hilarious. This is literally slapping his face onto the UV texture in Photoshop. And as you can see, it looks absolutely horrible. It didn't work actually. Yeah, it doesn't look like him at all. But you gotta learn. If you know how to make humans' face if you know how to make somebody's face like as resembled as you can, please let me know. So here I'm making carpet. Probably it's a bit too much to make this detail, but I wanted to learn how to create this kind of fur particle system, so I made that one. It's a tiny detail for such a long rendering time, but I think it's worth it than like hand painting for one by one later. So now I have 4 lights going on, and exporting each light separately with view render, view layers, and I brought them into Nuke and started making a comp, basically to see if the lighting is correct. And in comp, in Nuke, you can it basically shows you more fine detail of like what the value is correct or not, or composition is correct or not. So basically I'm adjusting each light inside a Nuke in post. I could have done in 3D, but I think Nuke can do even better tweaking, because it's essentially 2D image, and meanwhile you're just adjusting light in 3D. It takes just so long time, so it makes sense to do in 2D for me. Then I started realizing there's something off going on. Even when I tweak the light setting as much as I can inside Blender, and there is something missing. Like basically the lights are not exactly the same as you can see from the picture. And then I started realizing probably there are some lights that you don't actually see, or you don't actually feel. So for example, here's another light casting lights onto this plant. I thought initially that was coming from the primary light resource, but no matter how much I emphasized the light, it essentially didn't cast any lights onto the plant. That means there is a gaffer putting a light specifically on those plants, as well as the cabinet in front was pretty dark actually with the light that I had primarily. So that means there's another light specifically hitting that, casting the light onto the cabinet in front. So here adding more little props onto the kitchen counter. This is such a random jar from Blender Kit, but who cares? I mean, actually, yeah, you should care, because sometimes all those small props has meaning, but in this case, this jar and those little things, I don't think they have that much that much detail or meaning, and as long as their value is not distracting, I think it's fine. Come back to Nuke again to tweak the light, and one by one. So basically, I balance it out the light to the original. And then now I'm back. Now I'm in Photoshop to start painting Steven Yeun's face, basically to make it look like him. And from here onwards, it's basically mostly, I would say, just painting his face. I'm not basically, I have no experience with painting portrait, and God, I didn't know how hard it is to make someone people already know. Honestly, I shouldn't care much about making the resemblance, because it's not really important here. But I don't know, I couldn't ignore basically. So here I'm adding more detail onto those props in 2D. It's not much, it's pretty subtle, but basically small props, so like breaking edges a little bit will sell the photorealism. And also, yeah, I skipped it. I forgot to record the part, but I basically changed the wrinkle, painted the wrinkles, and his hand. I don't know, it was just easier to do in 2D. But making the class wrinkle right would have been a good practice though. But it's not that relevant to this storytelling, so I didn't make it in 3D because it would have taken too much time. And then I started realizing it's just too rough and it has no detail. I showed my partner and she was like, "Why did you do that? It looks so horrible." I was like, "Yeah, right." And adding more detail here. So here's a point that, like, if you start painting on top of 3D render, the painting part looks, if that looks pretty rough, and you can really tell that which part is painted and which part is not. So it's kind of hard to maintain the balance. So now I'm adding highlights onto his face, making a contour. But again, if you zoom out, it just doesn't look like him. It looks somebody else. I don't know. I don't know who's this guy. Never seen him before. Yeah, me trying to add more saturations or redness, but those things are not cutting it. I mean, it looks like human, but it doesn't look like him. Adding more textures. And I occasionally flip the canvas. I set the shortcut for it. And now I'm redoing, basically. It just bugged me so much. Because portrait is all about the allocation of the facial parts. Basically, it actually doesn't matter how photorealistic each parts are, but it's more important to place where it is supposed to be. So I'm basically cutting out his original face and aligning next to it and trying to find a balance. If you're a pretty good portrait painter, you can really laugh at me, and if you know the technique, please tell me. Like, I really can't paint the face. And then finally I really gave up and I started tracing his face. It took me at that time, it just cost me so much time just to make his face. It's probably not the best part of this whole challenge, so I'm just like You know what, probably I should get it done. I'm not a portrait artist, but you know, at least I wanted to bring it to the level like it's not bugging anybody. Now, those each features are pretty out of place, but it started looking like him just because those each parts are placed in the right place. After that, I think it's just a matter of blending them in, adding more texture, and balancing them out. I really respect portrait artists. I mean, it still look horrible, but at least better than the random guy that painted it at first. And there you go, you have it. This was a challenge of Master Film Study Minari. If you liked the video, please hit like button and please consider subscribing the channel, and see you in the next video.